MTV dubbed #Moonday, I'd have a little sleepover with myself and watch the new Teen Wolf. And I distinctly remember a lot of the episodes being really huge and really important to me, in the same way that I'm seeing a lot of these teenagers looking at these moments in Euphoria, and I can tell, like, they're gonna remember that in the same way that I remember, like, the episode Motel California. I live blogged that episode on my Tumblr. I live tweeted at the same time I was live blogging because it ripped my heart out. All of the characters' pain was aired out, their dedication to each other. The plot was reaching its crescendo, going toward the finale. It feels good to get excited about a show. I had the same feelings with other shows like Degrassi, and I was really invested. Watching these shows really helped me grow up. They stoked my creativity, and a lot of them really helped me find myself. I saw myself in some characters, and I saw who I wanted to be in others. I saw these characters make huge mistakes, and even when it was played out for drama, I still learned from them. I saw characters exploring romance and sex in a healthy way, and when it was unhealthy, it was shown as such. And I learned from that too. I watched characters figure out their sexuality, and that was super important for a young bi kid to see. And I think that it's like that for a lot of people. You watch TV to be entertained, but when you're a teenager, it's bigger than that. It helps you navigate life. It helps you figure things out, especially if you see yourself represented in these shows. Now that I'm an adult with a degree in secondary education, and I've had some experience as a high school teacher, even though I'm like pretty close in age to teenagers, I look at these shows quite a bit differently now that I'm older. I spent 4 years studying child development and adolescence, and now when I watch a teen show, I'm like, oh my god, please don't do that. What a bad choice. Where's your mom? Instead of, oh my god, this is the drama that I needed. And that is part of why Euphoria initially just gave me kind of bad vibes. Not only like sympathy for the fictional characters on the screen, but for the real life teenagers watching it. In my classroom, when I taught 10th and 11th grade film last semester, when I assigned a creative project for my class that had like a fan edit component to it, when 2 students asked me if they could make Euphoria videos, I told them that as long as it was appropriate, they could do it. Like anything to get them invested in the project, I was fine with. One of the videos used the song by SZA, I Hate You, and it was beautifully edited. I was so proud of this kid. The song fit perfectly, and it was edited in a way that truly showed Nate as the problem in the situation and not Cassie. And her final shot choice literally gave me chills, and I hadn't even seen the second season yet. Nate standing between Cassie and Maddie. She consumed the second season of the show, which in an ideal world, no teens would be consuming it, but she consumed it in a way that I can at least feel okay about. Like, she recognized the true issue in the situation, which is way more than I can say for most adults watching the show, who have just been dunking on Cassie this entire season and making memes out of Cal's little sound bites, which is weird. I was really proud of her for looking at this media in a way that's like healthy for her development. And this isn't to say that I looked at all media in a healthy way as a kid. When I was watching Degrassi, I thought Claire was a horrible person for breaking up with Eli, even though he was really scary and crashed his car to manipulate her. Sometimes media misses the mark, and sometimes teens who are still learning how to analyze media and make sense of the whole world miss the mark as well. And that's fine. But to me, Euphoria is on a completely different scale. It has influenced TikTok trends, music charts, fashion, makeup, and most definitely teens' brains and their attitudes and their expectations of life. Watching this show as an adult who works with and is invested in the success and health of children and teens, and who loves film and TV, has driven me to make this video. Before I get into it, I want to shout out some creators who have made amazing videos about Euphoria. Check out Amandabb's Everything Wrong with Euphoria videos, Kenny JD's Euphoria Isn't Real, It's Creepy. And I also want to give a special shout out to Nick DeRamio because I have been watching their videos a lot to help inspire my own analysis, and I have learned a ton about TV and film from them, in some cases more than I even learned like studying film in college. So without further ado, let's really get into it. Strap in. This is going to be really long and really detailed. My script is 28 single space pages long, so here we go.
I don't think that you should be a writer. In fact, I ask you to never write again.
I want to start by talking about how there is essentially no point to watching Euphoria because nothing ever gets resolved and everything always gets worse. Sort of like how Doctor Who has no point because everything magically gets fixed. And I want to start out with this idea so that it's in your head the whole time, because I think it's pretty relevant. So a YouTuber who I've always really liked, Bing, talked about this in a 2012, I think, video, and the idea has always stuck with me when I watch shows.
In Doctor Who, there are not rules. It's something that a lot of people I know refer to as Deus Ex Machina, the show. If you're familiar with writing terms, a Deus Ex Machina is a thing that pops up in the plot towards the end of an arc and saves the day or explains something away as if by magic. It's lazy writing, and it's everywhere in Doctor Who. It's fantasy, sci-fi, it is all built around the characters and our connection with the characters, our rooting for the characters, and our fear that something serious might actually change in their lives. Forgetting all the intrigue and the backstory and the secret Easter eggs and the ongoing story arcs, what is there to make us care? To actually connect with these people and their struggle.
In the case of Euphoria, there are bright, hopeful moments in Season 1 that get completely dropped in Season 2 and replaced with more taboo and more shocking things. The Doctor in Doctor Who is essentially God, so you never really have to care when the characters are in danger, but with Euphoria, it's kind of flipped. After a while, you don't really care that these characters are suffering because that's all that happens. After a while, it's like, who cares? We haven't even seen these people happy. We don't really have anything to compare it to. So why does it matter if things start to look up for characters a little bit if Sam Levinson is just going to take his magic wands and be like, kapow, another tragedy has happened? Like, okay, so like why are we watching then? And that's not to say Season 1 didn't have potential and didn't set up pathways out of hell for the characters. The first season ends with supportive adults, with Cassie and Maddie, after both going through traumatic experiences, even closer, looking forward to being independent.
I feel really good about tonight. Really? Yeah. I mean, I was thinking this is the first time since the beginning of high school that I haven't, been in love with somebody. Honestly, I love that for you.
I think I'm gonna do everything in my power for at least, the next 3 years to not fall in love.
Well, what if you do?
And intervene and fucking destroy it. I love you, Lex. I love you too.
I really fucking hate you.
I know.
You're abusive, psychopathic. Most of the time, I really hate the way you make me feel.
I know.
It's not good for us.
I know.
You mean, we shouldn't be together.
Maddie breaks up with Nate. Cassie says she's ready to be single. They declare that they're ready to be independent and to live for themselves. And I'm like, yes, okay, cool. And then Season 2 just opens with Maddie left drunk on the side of the road by her sister. So yeah, nothing gets resolved. Nothing gets resolved in Season 1 or Season 2. Nothing gets resolved because it just has to get bigger and bigger and snowball into the most controversial, most shocking thing. Even a huge plot point that a whole episode was dedicated to just got dropped. And I'm talking about Rue's suitcase and the risk of human trafficking. This girl gets kidnapped and it's completely left behind. Like Sam Levinson said, storyboarding makes him bored. And of course, when you're doing your job, you can't be bored. It has to be an episode of Bad Girls Club. But that's insulting to Bad Girls Club, because that show's entertaining and Bad Girls Club passes the Bechdel test. Euphoria is both criticized and applauded for its depiction of brutal and dark topics. It's a dark show. It's twisted. It's not like other teen shows. It's dark and real. But that's not actually true, because Euphoria isn't the first teen show to depict issues like addiction, mental illness, and abuse. It's just the most irresponsible one, with the biggest budget and the permission to have full frontal nudity for some reason. So let's get into the depiction of these topics and how it falls short and how other shows have done it better. So to me, it is completely okay to depict dark and gritty topics in your show, especially if it's realistic and it addresses relevant societal issues. My favorite genre of movie is horror. I love horror movies. I think they're done well when they use that horror to really show the fears that everyday people are experiencing, to uncover the bad things that are happening in society. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with showing dark and gritty things. Teens and adults alike can feel their fears and experiences are represented when current issues are shown on TV. A lot of times, this representation tries to spread awareness and is sometimes heavily laced with American nationalism, but my point is, it's not unheard of to show realistic and dark things on TV. And I think that in the pilot of Euphoria, there is so much potential to show these issues in a productive way. Euphoria's first season, I remember, was marketed as a gritty and real representation of Gen Z and the problems they face. School shootings, lockdowns, beauty expectations, social media, all shown, finally, in a real way, as if 8th grade didn't exist and have a very similar opening scene to the one shown in all the Euphoria trailers, but whatever. It shows potential for all of this stuff in the first episode, and then it just goes away completely. It references 9/11, the Bush administration, and the desensitization of Gen Z. There's a lockdown drill, and it's just seen as like a normal part of school. I think that that's interesting. Like, yeah, this generation is a bit desensitized to violence. Okay, let's explore that then. Like, when Nate has a gun, we're not going to explore the real issue of school shootings and gun control. He just, like, has a gun. That's not discussed. Okay. But intimate partner violence, surely we'll explore that since it's happening in the show and it claims to be exploring these issues. No, actually, season 2 is just going to be a love triangle with the abusive guy in the middle. And it's going to be shown and accepted as the abused girl's fault? Okay. What's the point of showing these topics if you have nothing to say about them? If the people watching this show walk away from it even more desensitized to violence and abuse and sexism and rape, then you have done a bad job exploring these topics. And yes, Sam Levinson showcases brutal topics, but you can't just depict things and then leave them there to die. Things need to evolve. One of the problems with Sam Levinson lies in how he shows these issues. Sam Levinson takes the route of show a bunch of wild stuff and then move on, and then don't forget the nudity. So let these serve as a trigger warning, by the way, for the rest of the video. So some topics he explores are intimate partner violence, dad issues, addiction, internalized homophobia, toxic masculinity, violence, unrealistic beauty standards, fat phobia, sexualization, nudes and social media, and mental health issues. And lastly, I'm gonna say rape, but inadvertently, because the rape that happens in this show isn't portrayed as rape. And I'm gonna talk more about that later. And tons of shows have, of course, explored these issues. But let's see how Sam portrays these topics and why I think it's doing more harm than good, and shout out some other shows that have set precedents and handle these issues more responsibly and more entertainingly. It shouldn't have taken until 2019 to have a black character at the forefront of a show like this. As a white woman, I don't want to leave race or the topic of representation out of this video, but I also recognize that it's not my experience. So I'm going to link some articles below that do a better job discussing this topic than I could from my position of privilege.
Been telling everyone that that was a part of the play.
It's the only thing I've ever done, and it's a disaster.
It could be worse.
How?
It could be boring.
That's true.
I mean, How many shows in the history of East Highland High has started a riot?
It's not even over yet.
Art should be dangerous.
The show goes on. Dust yourself off and get back on that pony.
Giddy up.
Let's fucking do this.
So the first topic that I'm going to talk about is addiction and Rue. Addiction is arguably the one thing that Sam Levinson writes about that he actually has experienced and that he actually knows what he's talking about. He has been open with his own struggles, which I think is very brave and important, and I think it's important to end the stigma and talk about these problems openly. I like that Euphoria shows Rue, a likable character, our protagonist, being horrible to her sister and mom. I think it's great that we see her making bad choices and messing her life up and lashing out at people, because that's how it really is. That's realistic. It's something that you can only really understand once you've been there, and it's why the show is honestly pretty triggering for a lot of people who are staying sober. So, okay, good job, Sam. I will give you that. There are folks who say that the show glorifies drugs. I will say, watching it as someone who works with kids and who has heard them talking about this show, I think they could do a better job of showing just how dangerous these drugs are. I grew up in an area that was really heavily impacted by opiate and heroin addiction, and so the local news of deaths in my hometown, plus the representation of hard drugs that I saw in the media, pretty much instilled in me.
It's not over yet.
This is what your family goes through. Your friends and your money. And your drugs and your self-respect and your future. And your life. Any questions?
That I do not want to mess around with that stuff because it could really easily kill you. In Euphoria, we see the psychic effects of the drugs on Rue. We see how it influences her behavior, and she does overdose, but it kind of seems like you can just walk around being high on heroin and opiates, and no one, not even your girlfriend or your teachers or your mom, will notice. So it must not be that scary. Mina sums it up really well in her video when talking about Elliot's character.
First of all, Rue is the only person on the show to suffer any kind of consequences for doing drugs, even though Elliot is also doing heroin, and no one seems to care about that. Also, he appears very put together. So is the message here, you can do heroin sometimes because for some people it doesn't affect them that badly.
And you can draw your own conclusions about whether or not the show glamorizes drugs. I think that watching it as someone who does not already struggle with addiction, you might think that a bump of coke or some fentanyl won't kill you the first time, but it can. Another consequence, besides death, is that you can easily get caught with illegal drugs and go to prison. So I think the show could do a better job of showing just how, scary these things are, especially given the fact that a lot of high schoolers watch this show and don't really know any better. I also want to point out that the idea of alcohol addiction and the effects of alcoholism aren't really shown with the same weight in Euphoria as Rue's addiction to drugs. There are some really serious things happening with Cassie and alcohol in season 2 especially. Underage alcohol dependency is kind of encouraged and normalized, and when it goes wrong, it's not framed as dangerous. Cassie is clearly struggling. She throws up and she's drunk in a hot tub and it's kind of just shown as oh my god, Cassie is so messy. What an idiot. People drown a lot when they're drunk, but it's shown and received more as Cassie is so embarrassing and pathetic, and less of Cassie really needs help. Her friends don't hold her hair back or even have her back. And it's not a secret that alcohol is an issue in her family. When she speaks to a doctor in season 1, she discloses that addiction runs in her family. She knows about it, her family knows about it, her friends likely know about it, but it's not explored at all. So anyway, yes, acceptable job dealing with addiction, at least drug addiction. So we're going to talk about Kat from Euphoria, and we are going to talk about Terry from Degrassi. Body positivity is a very relevant issue for teens, and body image issues have always been important to represent. It is important to have a wide range of body types in media, and Barbie Ferreria's character Kat is used to represent a bigger girl with confidence issues finding empowerment. Kat is a character who we meet as someone who has struggled with body image for a long time and lacks confidence in real life while experiencing Tumblr fame for her fanfiction, which I think is really cool and appropriate given that Barbie blew up on Tumblr. Season 1 revolves around her engaging in very disturbing activities with grown men for money. Sam Levinson has Kat find body positivity and confidence in the most dense way possible. Kat finds her confidence by doing webcam sex work for old men, and it is not shown as scary or exploitative or creepy, it's shown as empowering. There are many issues with this, but let's circle back. Let's talk about how Terry walked so that Kat could run rampant on the internet with no adult supervision. There are some parallels between Degrassi beyond just Kat and Terry. That is an unfortunate similarity between Degrassi and Euphoria and a lot of shows. Less represented people being phased out. Liberty and Hazel were phased out in Degrassi just like McKay was in Euphoria. Similarly, Terry and Kat, the only plus-size girls on either show, get their stories just completely obliterated. Kat empowers herself not by finding self-love, but by serving men sexually. She has a makeover and is more confident by wearing BDSM gear and doing adult men sexual favors. Kat's little hobby isn't seen as scary or illegal or dangerous like how these things actually are. She even becomes pals with one of the guys, and he's like giving her advice at one point.
It's good because it gave her the freedom to focus on the important things. Expanding her empire and collecting her motherfucking bag. You're so fucking worthless. She now had 4 men that she camps for cam sessions, most of which she turned down.
That is not at all realistic, and it is dangerous to portray it as a fun little confidence booster. Terry, on the other hand, gives viewers something attainable and something truly empowering. I would say that Terry is a role model. Terry McGregor was played by Christina Schmidt from seasons 1 through 3 of Degrassi: The Next Generation. Degrassi tackled this issue when I was a little kid, before I could even watch the show, but I was still a little kid internalizing photos of Paris Hilton, and this was when hip bones were the beauty standard. Terry does not have an easy time in high school. She's not only assaulted by the guy who eventually goes on to shoot Drake, she's assaulted and made fun of for her weight. She has body image issues and feels the pressure from society to be more thin and to show more skin. Terry becomes a plus-size model, which could be compared to Kat's experience as like a negative thing. It's still outside validation from the modeling industry, but it boosts her confidence in a pretty healthy way. She embraces the term plus size. She doesn't need to sexually degrade adult men in order to dunk on them. She does that with her own confidence and her own success in an age-appropriate way.
Hey, most girls on the planet look like this, so get used to it. No kidding. I made $500 today as a plus-size model. Yeah, plus size. What do you make, ice cream boy? Nice, Terry.
Besides the modeling, Terry has friends and parents and teachers who support her. She has goals and hobbies like actual teenage girls do, despite recent popular belief. But Kat's ventures into disturbing child pornography and being statutory raped is shown as empowering and normal. I mean, she gets into cars with adult men by herself at night and does these things, and it's just like brushed off. And it's not just with Kat, it is with everyone. The traumatizing and dangerous world of nudes and revenge porn and online stuff is completely normalized.
Yo, you recorded that shit?
Sam Levinson brings about the topic of the internet and nudes quite a few times in Euphoria. It is a constant in the first season, but this topic is just portrayed and in a very harmful way. A teenage girl watching might think that 1, it's normal and not a big deal for a boy to record me and share it around. 2, it's just part of being a boy. And 3, sending nudes is the new normal and adults just don't understand. Being sexual on the internet is rewarding and safe, and if I'm ever in a compromising situation involving nudes, I can't come forward for help because I can handle it myself or I'll get arrested.
What do you want?
I need something from you.
Nate, why would I do a single thing for you?
Because I'll put you in jail. Or on a sex offender registry. I mean, it's your choice. I don't want to force you to do anything.
which isn't true. None of those things are true, but it is communicated by the show. Boys who watch this have what's been communicated to them already by society emboldened, that it's standard to abuse women, and that it's normal to share private photos to friends and call the girls who you begged for nudes whores. Sure, the characters who do these things, Nate and Cal, are shown as obvious villains of the show, so the stuff that they're doing must be bad. But the female characters pretty much brush off every traumatic thing that happens to them involving this. Furthermore, kids don't have the cyber safety training that even my generation did as kids. And I'm 23 years old. I grew up online too. Kids are sharing photos of each other. Like, as a teacher, that has been an issue in schools. Kids are weaponizing social media to do harmful things, and Euphoria just kind of normalizes it. Kat's entire girl boss arc starts with a video of her having sex getting leaked to her whole school. The whole school sees it, the principal knows about it, he tries to help her, and she could get justice for this. The boys who did this horrible thing could have consequences, because it is extremely violating and it is a crime. But instead, this violation becomes her new passion and her key to confidence.
So, did you come?
No.
Imagine seeing this at the age of 14 or 15. Imagine seeing somebody become empowered by a non-consensual video of them having sex getting leaked. This is not real and it's not realistic. Having photos leaked is incredibly traumatic. Revenge porn has been illegal in California, where the show takes place, since 2013. It is a misdemeanor that can imprison you for up to 6 months. Of course, these cases are often not handled well, but how about showing it as what it is? Traumatic, and allowing Kat to grow as a character without completely submitting to the patriarchy. Or even have her go down that dangerous path and then discover that there is more to her than her value as determined by men on the internet. We'll get into some ideas I have for a better story for Kat a little bit later. Jules is at the center of revenge porn and blackmail surrounding her nudes. In fact, a non-consensual video taken of her being sexually assaulted by Cal is one of the hot topics of season 2. Not because sensitive material of Jules, a minor, taken without her consent by a grown man, is being watched and is possessed by people that are not her, but because it could put Cal in jail and mess up Nate's life. That's pretty much it. People who claim to care about Jules know that this DVD is in circulation, but for some reason, Nate has to be the one to return it to her. It couldn't have been found by Jules. The power couldn't even be put in her own hands. The same guy who blackmailed her for nudes that he solicited and reciprocated is the one who allows her to have this back, after he put a gun to Maddie's head to get it. The disc's existence is downplayed in its implications in Jules' life. It's really just used as stakes for Nate and not much else. Another instance of nudes and Nate and Jules has to do with how normalized nudes continue to be in contexts that are portrayed as a device to show Rue falling for Jules. I'm talking about the scene where Jules asks for Rue's help in taking artsy nude photos. This is shown as a tender, nice, normal scene. There really isn't any mention of whether or not Jules should be doing this, of what could happen if she does this, of how these could end up in the wrong hands, or of how she has value beyond her naked body. Jules could have asked Rue for artsy pictures, period. That would serve the purpose of the scene. Maybe Jules only had unflattering pictures that her dad took of her on vacation and needs Rue's help with cute posed ones. Maybe Jules needed help picking out an outfit to wear to see Nate for the first time. Rue would still get to bond with and fall for Jules in a scene like this. It could still have the same effect without completely normalizing child pornography. Because remember, these are still kids. These characters are high schoolers in their junior year, and real high schoolers are internalizing the media that they take in. Beloved and trustworthy Zendaya narrates,
The whole world's like, well, if you don't want it out there, don't take the news in the first place. I'm sorry. I know your generation relied on flowers and father's permission, but it's 2019. And unless you're Amish, nudes are the currency of love. So stop shaming us.
This honestly just seems like Sam Levinson's idea of what teenage girls are like, or maybe like what he wishes they were like. It's weird and gross. Because getting your nudes leaked is traumatizing. Being recorded without your consent is traumatizing. Having cyber sex with old men is damaging. Being in these situations have long-lasting impacts and shouldn't just be plot devices. The idea of sexual assault and rape are taken just as lightly in Sam's writing, which is another huge issue I have with the show. it normalizes rape. In fact, it doesn't even identify rape as rape. Euphoria is not the only teen-focused show to gloss over rape. Other shows have shown statutory rape as totally fine, but at the same time, other shows have shown rape as what it truly is while giving its viewers hope and validation of this is not okay and this should not happen. Some shows that I think do a really good job of this are Veronica Mars and Degrassi.
Shelley Pomeroy's party sophomore year. You said Dick pushed you into a room with me after I'd been roofied. But you didn't run out like you said you did you? Nope. You wanted to prove you were a man. It helped that I was unconscious, didn't it? Easy to imagine whatever it is you needed to imagine. You raped me!
Callie is assaulted in The Fosters, and we get to see her heal from this. We see characters grapple with this. We see them get justice, and if they don't, it is represented as an institutional issue or their own informed choice. It is not shown as a normal thing that can be moved on from and justified because it shouldn't be. Kat, as mentioned, engages in inappropriate acts with grown men, and it's shown as her girl bossification.
How old are you?
16.
Nobody comments on it in the show. In reality, this girl is a victim, but according to Sam, she's a legend. Cassie's entire Nate arc begins with a sexual assault that is not addressed as or shown as a sexual assault. He touches her inappropriately, then he has sex with her when she is extremely drunk and cannot consent. This party and this car ride are the catalyst for the entire season, and it is all framed as Cassie's bad decision and not Nate's straight up sexual assault of a drunk Cassie. Teenagers watching this are getting the message loud and clear that you can consent if you're inebriated, and if you are raped, it's your fault. That's not true. If you're drunk, you cannot consent to something. This is god awful, and I haven't really seen it addressed. Maddie is also raped in the show, and in both instances, she is shown as being completely in control. When she and a 20-something have sex publicly at a party, it is shown as Maddie's doing this to make Nate jealous, not why is a 20-something hooking up with people at an obvious high school party and then acting surprised when he finds out that she's a minor. While it is still statutory rape and she was still drinking, for some reason, she is written as pretending to have blacked out.
Maddie had an idea.
Alcohol is not good for me.
A character who is actually a victim pretends to be a victim and lies about blacking out. This normalizes false rape allegations, which are rare, the idea that girls can simply cry rape when they regret having sex with someone, and this is an extremely harmful idea that perpetuates rape culture, because this does not happen that often, but the argument is very often used to dismiss survivors. This decision on Sam's part makes it seem like, 1, Maddie isn't actually a victim in the situation, and 2, teenage girls make up rape, and 3, rape should be taken super lightly. The incident is only discussed as a rape for Nate to get his own fulfillment. He obviously does not care about people being assaulted because he does it himself. And Sam Levinson obviously doesn't care about people being assaulted. He only explicitly states it as such when it can help out Nate. Another unsettling instance of Maddie's experiences being dismissed happens in her backstory.
When she was 14 on vacation in Panama City Beach, she met a guy who was like 40.
Hey, you from around here?
Which, in retrospect, seems kind of rapey and weird, but honestly, she was the one in control.
Yeah?
My yellow roses, my daughter. Darling, turn that down, please. I can offer you a comfortable home, a sunny garden, a congenial atmosphere, my cherry pies.
Maddie is portrayed as a nymphette figure, and even though she's 14 in the sequence, there isn't a young version of herself. It's just Alexa Demi playing a 14-year-old who has all the power in a relationship with a 40-year-old. Humbert Levinson is sick for this. That is so very disgusting. It is impossible for a 14-year-old to have any control in any sexual situation. This is an 8th grader we're talking about. This scene plays out quickly, but it still does damage and plays into the nymphette trope. And of course, this incident is never addressed again with Maddie. She never reflects on it, and that lack of acknowledgement adds to the normalizing of pedophilia that is rampant in the entire show. Jules is also a survivor, but despite the obvious discomfort she goes through with her encounter with Cal and the fact that she's a child, Jules is shown as just cool with it all. And that's not expounded on in season 2.
I have no intention of, like, hurting you or anything. I'm sorry about earlier. That was kind of dumb.
Why couldn't her dad have found out about this? Why couldn't someone intervene? The fact that she was raped by a grown man is just kind of laughed at by Rue as like, oh my god, how crazy. I can't believe you did this. Not, I can't believe this happened to you.
That's Nate's dad?
That's Nate's dad.
No fucking
Yes,
way!
fucking way. You're full of shit.
No way!
You're full of shit. Do you know who he is? He fucking owns half this town. He built it. All the apartment buildings past Kemper, they're his.
Rue, I
There's
swear
no way.
to God, that's the guy
There's
I
no
fucked.
way. Bullshit.
I'm being 100% serious. You don't believe me?
No, actually, I don't.
Okay, watch. And then you fucking dropped the chili! Oh my god!
Oh, he dropped the fucking chili, and then you looked at me.
Yeah, because I was screaming inside.
Yeah, well, that made him fucking look at me. He looked at me in the fucking eyes.
Oh, I feel so bad. That was literally the meanest thing I've ever done.
Rue is normally so protective of Jules, but not when she is literally raped by Nate's dad. The whole experience is just used as blackmail against Nate, but it's not explored how it impacts Jules. Jules is pretty much just a plot device when it comes down to her own body and how it's used in the show. Can somebody intervene? Can somebody help these kids? No, because in Sam's eyes, it's not even something worth resolving. Jules' rape is just a pawn for more drama between Maddie and Nate in season 2. Cal is brought to justice, maybe, but not by Jules, by Nate. Nate is the judge, jury, and executioner. Nate pulls all the strings. He's not just a villain, but everything revolves around him. The girls don't get to have hobbies or interests, they just have entanglements with Nate. Let's talk about Nate. People mostly agree that Nate is a demon. He's the obvious villain of the show, despite some moments of sympathy that we see for him. He messes up everything all the time. The bully jock stereotype is taken to the level of serial killer, criminal mastermind levels with Nate's character, which could be interesting. We love a good villain, but he's not a good villain. He just kind of does bad things for no reason. What makes a villain interesting is why they're like that. Even the most horrendous villains who we can't forgive or who are hard to forgive have motivations. They have usually a backstory that helps to explain why they are the way that they are. Nate doesn't really have either of these things. An exploration of his sexual orientation, internalized homophobia, and abuse from his father are set up season 1, but then they're just left behind. Those ideas are pretty much untouched in season 2. It's hinted that he has possibly faced abuse from his father in a very quick shot in season 2 that honestly I think was mostly played for shock value because it's very disturbing. And a motivation for all of his nonsense is barely strung together in a narration. It's a motivation that doesn't make sense. There's nothing about Nate wanting his father's business in season 1, and no one is gonna go through blackmailing people, orchestrating perjury, etc. just to be able to take over a real estate business in your hometown. Nate could get a football scholarship and he could probably go to any school he wants, so it doesn't really make sense. He is a villain with a left behind backstory and no real motivations, so who cares? Of course, you can have absolutely diabolical characters who are just purely evil. Those characters exist, and they're fun to watch and they're fun to read.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Characters that will never grow and are just horrendous, like Song-woo in Killing Stalking, like Chuck Bass, like Logan Echolls, like Kylo Ren, like Darth Vader. But even these characters who have raped, killed, committed genocide, murdered children, and so on, have motivations. We can even be sympathetic for them and see their side. We can have moments where we can mourn who they could have been or who they were. had they not gone down this path. It almost always comes down to daddy issues, but it's still complex and it's still more interesting to watch than a guy who just walks around and wreaks havoc. Song-woo is horrible, but fans of Killing Stalking still see where things went wrong and they understand why he does what he does, even if it's unforgivable. Chuck Bass is honestly kind of well loved despite the fact that he tried to rape Jenny in season 1 and is a very bad person. It's almost at Euphoria levels of trashy, but at least Chuck has motivations when he's doing these things. We see where things went wrong with him. The same thing with Logan from Veronica Mars, who eventually is redeemed. I don't really feel any sympathy for Kylo Ren despite Disney's best efforts, but when I watch the prequels, my heart breaks. I grow to like Anakin every single time, and even though I know he's going to become a dictator and a war criminal, I am still hoping that somehow things change this time and he can fulfill his potential. Furthermore, if Levinson truly wanted to represent the ideas of toxic masculinity, trauma, and internalized homophobia, he could have done that. It's weird to me that the male characters in this show have pretty much no depth. They're pretty much just placeholders to mess up the lives of the women in the show, aside from Ethan, who doesn't really have much depth. I wish the male characters in the show could be three-dimensional without just being diabolical. It could be fun to explore. We've seen characters who experience trauma, who experience internalized homophobia, who are victims and perpetuators of toxic masculinity, who are not villains. Shaolin Fantastic in The Get Down is misogynistic, but he doesn't just go around being misogynistic all the time. And it's not for no reason. He's a survivor of abuse. He has aspirations. He has male friends who hold him accountable and who are there for him when he struggled. This is a great thing for men to see on screen. When Shaolin calls Mylene a name or is disrespectful, his friend Zeke doesn't allow it in the same way that McKay does when Nate makes fun of Cassie. Lucas in Eyewitness is in the closet and is abusive to his boyfriend. He does participate in misogyny and he does some awful things, but his character still develops. Ryan Atwood from The OC is traumatized, but he's still a good person and he rises above these struggles. The same thing happens with Philip in Eyewitness and with lots of characters. You can explore trauma without having the traumatized person continue that cycle. Furthermore, we can have male characters who are gay who are not evil because they are gay. I don't understand why we can't just have a gay character who is gay and a character. Internalized homophobia is an issue that people face, and homophobia certainly still exists, as we can see from recent events, but it's strange that most of the reasoning behind Nate and Cal being villainous is because they haven't dealt with their sexuality. Can we at least have a male role model who shows Nate it's okay to be gay or bi or whatever? He's just going to be violent for very vague and gay reasons. Having a backstory and having a motivation is bare minimum villain writing, but we only get a couple vulnerable Nate moments. And hardly any motivation and hardly any reason for him to be desirable to these girls whose lives revolve around him. Like, Nate isn't even cool or interesting. He's just tall. And Cassie and Maddie and Jules' entire lives revolve around this guy, which takes us to our next section. Do girls have hobbies?
But do girls have hobbies? Select few, but it's rare.
How many girls do you know actually have hobbies?
I'm glad you asked because I have many. My first one is eating. Then my next one's putting in a ponytail. My third one is going, and my fourth one is...
In a recent article in The Cut, the girls' storylines are summarized, and it's comedically sad to see it listed all out for us. It's also comedically sad to see its actors grasping at straws to not insult the writing. I think it's sad that the actors in the show have to ask the writer-director to make moments more emotional. Like, dude, write better, please. Discussed Kat and how her empowerment stems from pleasure in grown adult men, but why doesn't she get to be anything else? She's introduced as a talented writer who is famous on Tumblr. What if that was looked into more? What if Kat wrote the ultimate love story and wrote a badass version of herself in a fanfic and then realized that she could be that confident in real life? What if Kat made a friend on Tumblr? What if Kat entered a writing contest and won? What if she was stumped on her college essay and used her writing skills to reflect on her experiences and then got into a competitive writing program? What if she showed Ethan her writing as a way to be intimate rather than just immediately having sex with him? What if she did literally anything in season 2? There are some rumors surrounding it. My guess is that Sam Levinson wanted to give his mom, pregnant sexy Cassie, more screen time, I guess. Speaking of Cassie, what happened to her love of figure skating? That was in her backstory. She enjoyed figure skating. She was good at it. Why doesn't she put on ice skates ever besides in flashbacks? It is so significant to her character that when she's going through the trauma of having an abortion, she pictures herself skating as an escape, or as a reflection, depending on how you look at it. This could have given Cassie something other than crying and nudity and pain and suffering. What if when she was going through one of her 4 a.m. makeovers and digging through her closet, she found her ice skates or one of her skating outfits? What if that served as a turning point for her in season 2, as a crumb of character development? Imagine Cassie throwing away her skates and Lexi or Suze noticing and encouraging her to go skating. What if instead of a bowling date with Maddie and Kat and Jules, they went to an ice rink and Cassie was there? She could feel whole outside of a man. She could break it off with Nate. There could still be drama between Cassie and Maddie, but maybe they could bond over the trauma they faced from Nate and become stronger together instead of blaming each other. But of course, Cassie's entire storyline in season 2 must revolve around Nate, and the world must blast her character rather than look at Sam Levinson sideways for making such bad writing decisions. Jules is the most aspirational character in the first season.
But I definitely haven't reached my full power.
She's interested in fashion and in exploring herself and her own gender expression. In the last episode of season 1, Nate Jacobs says that Jules has dreams.
Are you sure that Jules told you everything? You know what I like about her? She has these very real dreams, and I seriously think that she's going to achieve them. What about you?
Honestly, I don't really give a fuck.
Yeah, I gathered that. It's probably why you're spending all your time with someone who's gonna leave you and won't even remember who the fuck you are.
Rue having no aspirations makes sense for her character. She says on multiple occasions that she never expected to live past her teens and she doesn't really care about life. That's an appropriate time to have a character with no goals when she really just needs to be surviving. But Jules' passion gets dropped for a boy who comes out of nowhere. It's the second semester of junior year and she does not mention college, fashion, nothing. What happened to Jules? Even Hunter Schafer asked why a random boy was introduced to the plot. Fashion is part of what makes her and Maddie iconic characters, but her interest in pursuing it is abandoned in season 2. Lexi picks up writing in season 2 and writes her play, but part of her storyline and even part of her play plot is Fez. There's suspense around the play because she doesn't see him in the audience. They hang out at his house together. There's a budding romance, and it's a fan favorite, which is weird. In season 1, it's established that Fez is not only a drug dealer and a murderer, but a full-grown adult.
You dropped out of school at 20, and now you're a gangster. Are you like fucking Tony Montana? What's the plan?
The relationship between him and Lexi could work as like a brother little sister type of thing, maybe. The relationship between them is inappropriate, and I wish her character could have just put on the play without having to wait for a boy that she likes to come see it. You know what would have been meaningful? If she had sent an invitation to her dad. They make a point to talk about the shaky relationship between the Howard sisters and their father, and this could have been a great opportunity for him to either, 1, not show up and for Lexi to grow and move on with her art, or 2, for him to show up and for something to come of that. But at least Lexi has a hobby, even if it's publicly bullying her older sister. In Maddie's backstory, Rue tells us that Maddie does not want to work and that she loves doing nothing. That's fine. Can she grow up though? In season 2, we have her as a babysitter, which I had fun seeing. It's nice for Maddie to have some pleasant moments, and she takes a genuine interest in taking care of this kid, along with fashion. So why can't that be anything more than a vehicle for this creepy stuff to happen with an adult woman? What if Maddie decided that, against all odds, maybe she's interested in education? What if she pursued fashion or modeling? Her mom's a nail technician, which seems like something they would bond over, but we'll touch on the lack of meaningful adult relationships later. From a writing standpoint, it's important for characters to have identities and motivations, but these girls are pawns in their own stories. I shouldn't be saying this in 2022. Seeing girls with aspirations and goals and identities outside of their love lives is important. I've seen a trend of apathy in Gen Z, at least in my experience, and it's obviously not Euphoria's fault completely. These kids have lived through a pandemic and other traumatizing events, and when it feels like the end of the world, it might not feel like it matters to have hobbies or goals. I totally get that. Like, I'm on Gen Z's team. I'm rooting for you guys. But this is all the more reason for TV shows to have characters that don't necessarily have to be role models, but they should at least have interests. This should be done not just because it's important, but because it can help move a story along and give it higher stakes and more weight. In The Get Down, Myleen's passion for singing is not only a character motivation, but it's part of her personality, and it also causes conflict with the other characters. Myleen has conflicts with her religious father and with her love interest Zeke. She's caught between two worlds, and she is driven to succeed no matter what, while still trying to balance having a family and a boyfriend. This is interesting. This makes us want to keep watching. In Degrassi, Manny Santos deals with some of the same issues as Cassie: abusive guys, fuse with best friends, and she has an abortion as well. But that's not all that happens to her. She's more than her struggles. She has a goal she's working toward. In The Fosters, Mariana wants to do well in school, and she eventually goes to MIT through her hard work. And she still has other drama, which, yes, ties into these integral parts of her personality. She's stubborn and determined and sometimes selfish, and this creates interesting drama and helps her achieve her goals. And goals for characters don't have to be as huge as MIT or like a booming music career. In Dawson's Creek, Joey wants to get out of her hometown and move on to bigger and better things. She still has struggles, she still has relationships, she makes mistakes, but she's a full person. It shouldn't be too much to ask for female characters who are whole entire people. Even over-the-top, drama-rich shows like The OC have more well-rounded female characters than Euphoria. Looking back, I can't think of the girls having any goals or aspirations in their high school years, but at least they have a meaningful friendship and support each other, which is more than what you can say for the girls in Euphoria. As a present woman and a former teenage girl, watching how these girls who are supposed to be friends talk to each other and treat each other feels really weird and sad. A scene in particular that was quite a head scratcher for me was when Jules was essentially making fun of Rue with Elliot and letting him make guesses about her sexuality behind her back.
Because you're like a sexual person.
Not all the time, but sometimes. Fine. No, okay, she's not a sexual person. Or like maybe she is, but I just haven't seen that side yet.
I wouldn't blame yourself.
I'm not.
I'm just saying it's like easy to take that kind of stuff personally.
Are you like trying to be an asshole right now?
I'm being sweet right now.
How is that sweet?
Because you're very fucking fuckable.
Why?
That wouldn't happen, I don't think, in real life. Girlfriends or not, teenage girls protect each other, and they protect each other from boys. They exist in a society where girl code is necessary, whether it's, will you come to the bathroom with me, or will you help me write this breakup message? There's obviously drama in friend groups, but not the straight up apathy that these characters show for each other's struggles. Because teenage friendships, especially teenage girl friendships, are ride or die. When there are fights, it can get ugly, sure, but not to the point where you would dismiss your friend's abuse and then allow her abuser to come hang out in a hot tub with you on her birthday. All of these girls are damaged by the patriarchy. They could heal together from this. That is what happens in real life, and it can be beautiful. I have high school friends who I've lost touch with, who I've been estranged from, but I would still protect them in a heartbeat. If friends who I haven't talked to in years, who I've had falling outs with, showed up at my door, I would let them in. Because it's just like that. At the end of the day, girls show up for each other. Girls are protective with each other, at least in my experience. That's why friends exist, to help each other grow through these things. Something that I think belongs in this section is the show's treatment of sex and how high schoolers engage in sex. It has been shown in real life that teenagers are having less sex than in past generations. They have more access to information and to birth control than ever before. Gen Z is mostly way less wild than our mom's generation and our grandmother's generation. So why is Sam Levinson showing these girls' entire lives revolving around having sex? And why is it so explicit and so mature? I think that it's okay to talk about teenagers and how they handle this subject in TV. It can honestly, if done right, be good for teens to see this type of thing realistically portrayed. I don't like this story, but the scene in The Fault in Our Stars is a good example of how sex scenes in teen media can be done right. It's a scene that you're not going to feel uncomfortable watching with your mom. There's consent. There's awkwardness, there's wholesomeness, there is protection. That is normal. A lot of girls' first time is legitimately traumatizing, and it is something that should not be portrayed as the only thing that makes you cool or powerful. It's a serious thing, and being sexually active takes a lot of responsibility. Could we at least have characters talk about birth control, STDs, the risk of pregnancy outside of it just being another traumatizing moment for Cassie that doesn't ever come up again? Can we stop showing full nudity and graphic scenes with characters that we are perceiving as minors? It's irresponsible, it's nasty, and it's just not realistic to have female characters blow off their friends for it. So why does Kat blow off Maddie for a random guy when she needs her and is clearly struggling? Why do her friends not discourage her from seeing Nate? You would think that in a realistic situation, Maddie's friends would notice the red flags and completely discourage her from seeing him, possibly even confronting him themselves. I have been vocal when I think that my friends are being mistreated. That's just how it is. Like, you look out for your friends. Why does Kat make it sound like Maddie's fault?
Because I won't sit and listen to you bitch and moan about your psychotic, abusive boyfriend who you've literally broken up with 1,000 times.
It was literally the lowest point in my life, so yeah. That and the fact that you're just fucking mean.
Maddie, ever since I've met you, all you talk about is yourself, your clothes, your boyfriends, whatever superficial shit you think is so fucking important. Sorry, I'm no longer in.
Kat simply says, I am no longer interested, and offers no care or help to Maddie. Cassie doesn't really say anything either, and it's obvious that he's being abusive toward her. And the scene in the hot tub with Cassie. What happened to holding your girlfriend's hair back when they throw up? What happened to making sure your friends, especially your sister, aren't left alone when they're wasted?
She was drinking while I was driving.
How long ago was this?
Like an hour and a half.
Did you call her?
She's not answering.
She always answers.
I know, it's fucking weird.
Lexi leaving Cassie on the side of the road, Jules allowing Rue to be left on the side of the road. These girls have no regard for each other, and it makes no sense to me. These characters may as well have just had completely unrelated and separate storylines, because they don't even have real friendships. Maybe Sam Levinson just never had any friends, but it's really draining to watch a show that has no real friendship. That's what makes us invested in characters rather than just watching a spectacle play out on the screen. Who cares that Maddie would never do this to Cassie when we've barely seen a meaningful relationship outside of flashbacks in the first place? We need a foundation. We need relationships. That's what helps balance the constant shocks with an actual show grounded in emotions. Just give us something to work with. Give these poor kids someone supportive to lean on in times of need. Which brings us to our next point. There are no supportive adults in this show. So, no teachers exist at Euphoria High, apparently. Because if we had a teacher that a character was close with, that would just lead to these characters having passions other than boys, and I guess we just can't have that. No teachers notice that Rue is high 24/7. No teachers intervene with Nate. No teachers talk to Cassie about her sudden changes. In real life, teachers are trained thoroughly in noticing these things. We notice when kids start dressing differently. We notice when you start acting differently. We know when you're high. We know when there's drama going on, even if you think you're hiding it well. We notice, we know, and most importantly, we care. Is it too much to ask for one supportive adult in this show? It doesn't have to be after school specially to have a teacher character who's reliable and even entertaining. We have seen supportive teachers time and time again make a difference in a plot or in a character's development. Otherwise, the show or movie is just a vacuum of suffering. If everyone existed with not a single person in the world to support them, not a friend, a sibling, a partner, a parent, a teacher, everyone would just jump into the ocean. That's not life, and that's not realistic. Even characters who have done terrible things in other shows, characters who seem to have no one, they still find love and they still find support. Even when they run away from it, there has to be some hope. Yeah, Brian Atwood is horribly traumatized and he makes a lot of bad decisions. Even though his birth family isn't reliable, he finds his family in the Coens.
And we want to be your legal guardians. We want you to be part of the family. If you want to be.
What if it doesn't work?
Well, how do you mean?
Well, what if something happens and you guys change your mind?
Like what? You steal a car, you burn down a house, you beat up the captain of the water polo team. Those ships have sailed, my friend.
That's part of his story. That's interesting. It wouldn't be interesting if Ryan just suffered constantly and had no peace or fun moments. We have an adult character who's reliable, even if flawed at times, in Sandy. In Teen Wolf, the kids go through a lot and they keep some crazy secrets, but in the final hour, they can rely on their parents. They can rely on their coach. They can find help and support.
Get some rest.
Thanks, Mom.
Grams in Dawson's Creek disagrees with Jen on a lot, and they butt heads. But she's there unconditionally for Jen through her darkest moments, even when Jen doesn't want to accept her love. Joey has an untraditional home situation, and she and her sister argue, but she's there for her when she needs it, and she helps her navigate womanhood.
So what kind of kiss was it? Peck on the cheek? Probing tongues, fingers clawing at your neck?
Keeping it going with Dawson's Creek, Pacey has issues with his father and his family, and even though he can't rely on his family, he has friends he can rely on, and he has his friends' parents he can rely on. In Degrassi, there are some horrible parents, and I think that's important to show, but the principal is constantly reliable. Students go to him when something illegal or scary happens. When people are stuck and they don't know what to do, they go to their principal, and he does his best to help his students, because that's the whole point of a principal. That's not to say that the school system in America isn't deeply flawed. Principal Simpson is in a Canadian school. I don't know much about Canadian schools, but I mean, anything has to be better than America, right? But can we have one supportive adult? Imagine if someone had told the principal at Euphoria High School that Nate was doing all these things. If Nate's coach sat down with him and was like, what are you doing? Like, are you good? That would do something, and that would be realistic. Because I know in TV shows, coaches are usually shown as like purveyors of toxic masculinity, but coaches, I feel like coaches get a bad rap in the media, because at schools I've worked at, coaches have been super supportive. Like, I have seen male students especially make really meaningful connections with their coaches. I've seen coaches make really big differences in students' lives and the trajectory of their lives because they're choosing to work with kids for a reason. Why can't Nate's coach be a character? Like, why can't someone help him? Like, what if the students actually told the principal that things were wrong instead of just lying? When issues are brought to adults' attention, the message that's sent in this show is that kids can just suffer through it themselves. When teachers notice Maddie is covering up and acting different and her bruises are exposed, Maddie's mom insists on pressing charges, and then we just never see her again. Jewel's dad is amazingly supportive in season 1 and then just doesn't exist in season 2. Suze takes Cassie to her abortion appointment and supports her, and then she's dismissive and absent in season 2, but she still roots for Lexi when she humiliates her recently traumatized eldest daughter. Rue's mom delivers that beautiful monologue at the end of season 1, and there's a whole montage of the support of adults.
Oh, you guys look so cute. She'll be kind and sensitive. Maybe too sensitive. She won't be an easy child. She'll struggle. Just walk in and hold your head up high, baby. And in turn, you'll struggle to understand her. You look beautiful. I don't know. To understand what's going on inside of her head.
But somehow, Rue's mom doesn't notice in season 2 that her daughter is using drugs again. Nate's parents are nothing, and that's like the whole point. Sometimes parents suck, but not a single person intervenes. No one tries to help him. That doesn't make sense. You can have characters suffer, but there has to be some relief, some help at some point. 2 entire seasons with pretty much no characters having any support from anyone is exhausting to watch. Why can't we have a single parent notice that things are wrong with their kids? Why can't we have a crumb of motherly wisdom or fatherly support? Not a teacher or a coach stepping in without being shown as untrustworthy to the teen audience. It's important for kids watching this show to be able to internalize that if you need help, you can tell someone. The scene where Maddie is handcuffed and forced to show her bruises is not what will happen to you if you report abuse. Honestly, a lot of times when abuse is reported, women are dismissed. But if you're in a situation like hers, when people are offering to help you, accept help. Even if you don't want to press charges. Accept emotional help. Accept support from people. There are people in your life who are here to help you. And with that, I would like to talk about Maddie. Like I said, Maddie is described as someone with no aspirations and someone who wants to simply do nothing. Someone who's obsessed with their appearance and very confident. This is fine. It's great to have a confident female character. I love that. That's why people love Maddie. However, she's not the empowering character the TikTok sounds show her as. Every choice she makes is made for Nate or with Nate in mind. This is not to say that we can't portray the struggles that victims of intimate partner violence go through, and it's not to say that we can't have strong female characters who also are in relationships, but it is excessive in Maddie's case. Before Maddie does pretty much anything in season 1, she makes a smug look in Nate's direction. It's obvious that everything she does is to make Nate jealous, to be closer to Nate, or to get Nate's attention, which was almost okay. At the end of season 1, she breaks up with him. There's room and hope for Maddie, who is able to be independent, to break free of this abusive person. That doesn't end up happening. She can't even be free of trying to make Nate jealous at her own birthday party.
Thank you. I'm so glad you guys are back together.
We're not back together.
You're not?
No.
I mean, I was gonna say no, but why are you saying no?
Because we're not.
I know, but why do you sound so definitive about it?
I wasn't being definitive.
It sounded like it.
No, I mean, she just asked a question.
That you
so
didn't
I
have
was
to
just-
answer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But you did.
I don't understand what we're arguing about.
You and your tone.
But we're not back together. Yet.
I mean, why not just say we're working it out?
You literally just said you were gonna say no.
Right, but that's me.
Meaning what?
Meaning that when I say it, it means something totally different than when you say it.
Okay. It might seem that way in your head, Maddie, but it's the same way.
Yeah, but it's also the speed with which you said no.
Give me a
It was
fucking
quick.
break.
It was.
It
It was like
wasn't.
a
No,
reflex.
it wasn't like a reflex at all. It wasn't.
What an amazing opportunity for Maddie to stand up to him, to draw a line, to say, this guy abused me. He's a horrible person and I don't want him anywhere near me. To embarrass him in a way that isn't just her going for his attention over again. Because that whole scene is made about her maybe kind of possibly thinking of getting back with Nate. The whole season is us waiting for her to find out that he's with Cassie. And when it does happen, there's no mention of Nate's abuse. Maddie says that she would never do this to Cassie and she's hurt, but it's focused more on, you had sex with my ex-boyfriend, than this person abused me and has moved on to abusing my best friend, or I can't believe that my best friend is ignoring the fact that this guy abused me by being with him. It's kind of just reduced to petty drama. Maddie was traumatized in season 1. She finally makes a decision to move on, and then there's just no mercy in season 2. We get Maddie delivering one-liners that are lip-syncable on TikTok. We get Maddie holding onto a DVD of Jules being raped and hanging out with Jules like it's nothing, which, speaking of girl code, that would not happen. If someone found their friend's non-consensual sex tape, they would return it to them immediately. I think most girls would do that, even for their worst enemy. But we need Maddie to have this power over Nate's head, I guess. Most disturbingly in this season, we have Maddie abused even more by Nate when he breaks into her room, threatens to kill himself, and then completely petrifies Maddie by making her think she's about to die. Amanda in her video points out something that I didn't notice, that Maddie freaks out more when Nate is holding the gun to his own head than when he's pointing it at her. And after that scene, we just get nothing. There's no recovery, there's no room to breathe, Maddie doesn't get help, Maddie just lays there for a minute, and then it's just on to her being mad at Cassie. She's fine, I guess, after all of that, because we get Maddie chasing Cassie around, calling her the C word, and we aren't reminded of Nate's abuse, but of Cassie's betrayal. Even after he puts a gun to her head, she knows what Nate is capable of and still slams Cassie's head into a wall. Not to mention, the betrayal started with a sexual assault where Cassie was drunk and alone in Nate's car, after her sister left her stranded, drunk, and alone. It is time to talk about Cassie.
What? I can't say it to her, but you two can say it to me? I never said you didn't have any self-respect. You don't have to! I can fucking feel it!
So Cassie is a very controversial topic, and I'm aware of this. But I'm comfortable outing myself as a Cassie apologist, because I kind of think everyone should sympathize with Cassie. She's a child, and she is a victim. A lot of people have taken issue with Cassie's characterization and subsequent sexualization in this season. Nara Harzetti writes, "It is telling that Cal, Nate's abusive father and actual pedophile who had sex with his son's classmate, gets more of an emotional backstory and context for his behavior than Cassie, who is stuck like a pretty hamster on a flowery wheel. It is also worth telling that not a single minute in 4 episodes has been spent this season on an empathetic glance in the direction of Cassie's mental health rather than her sex appeal. Every issue that Levinson attempts to address with Cassie, he completely fails at, because there can be no death of the author here. When it comes to Cassie, it's impossible to see her as a standalone character in a fictional show because Levinson's own sexualization of her is so blatant and so distracting. Roland Barthes himself cannot kill the author here because his gaze is written all over Cassie. One of the issues in the show is Cassie's grappling with the world sexualizing her. This is something I would say every girl and woman goes through. That is an important issue to represent. But Sam doesn't explore it. We're supposed to be seeing the patriarchy's impact on Cassie, but Sam is the patriarchy. And yes, we're going to talk about Laura Mulvey, and we're going to talk about the male gaze. The male gaze is an idea that has taken on a completely new meaning from its source material, Laura Mulvey's visual pleasure and narrative cinema. I want to share a little bit from this article in the context of Cassie. Pleasure in looking has been split between active male and passive female. The determining male gaze projects his fantasy onto the female figure, which is styled accordingly. In their traditional exhibitionist role, women are simultaneously looked at and displayed, with their appearance coded for strong visual and erotic impact so that they can be said to connote to be looked at-ness. There is a lot more to this article and a lot of psychoanalytic theory. Give it a read if you have time and if you have patience for psychoanalytic theory. The show itself is the perfect example of the male gaze. With Cassie, it's not what you say, but how you say it. Cassie is 17 years old. She's a baby. Her hair, costuming, and makeup make her appear pretty young. I think that Sydney Sweeney is an excellent Cassie. It's believable that she's in high school. But before we can even get to know her, we're bombarded with many nude photos of her, shown in rapid succession, and there are a lot. With Cassie though, in season 1, the nude scenes are hard to watch if you're a normal person. But Sydney Sweeney's an adult, people argue. Yes, but she's believably playing a kid. That's what makes her role in The Handmaid's Tale so gut-wrenching and so effective. There are no close-ups of her body because there don't need to be, and because there shouldn't be. She's portraying a child. Levinson doesn't do what the directors of Handmaid's Tale do. He sexualizes Cassie and then demonizes her. And when things seem like they're gonna get better for her, they get worse for no reason. Even Sweeney was shocked when she found out about Levinson's intentions with her character. You can look at the issue of sexualization without sexualizing the character. It happens in Misfits, it happens in Veronica Mars, it happens in so many shows.
Heard from study today. You want to come with? Duncan will promise to take his shirt off. Does that sweeten the pot? Does it make you horny?
And of course, sexualizing teenage characters is an issue in lots of teen shows, but certainly not to this extent. Why can't we see the effects of Cassie being sexualized outside of her unhealthy attachment to a man? Why can't we see her friends talk to her about this? She says she's going to be single at the end of season 1, and it seems like she feels pretty good about it. Even after going through an abortion and a toxic relationship and a breakup, she seems optimistic. But then that doesn't get followed up on and things just get worse. You could say that Cassie will grow in season 3, but we shouldn't have to wait 4 entire years to see a character grow in the slightest. We should not have to sit through this much suffering without even knowing that much about our characters. And with all the nudity, people love to say, oh, it's a show for adults, it's not for kids, or it's just a show. But if adults were watching a show about high schoolers and they saw the actual characters as their actual ages, like in Degrassi, it would be incredibly disturbing. We wouldn't be showing a teenage girl's naked body. So why are we showing a teenage character's naked body? Shows can deal with sex and even female sexuality without being downright fetishistic. Female characters can explore their sexuality without being shamelessly sexualized. We have the iconic Manny Santos, who walked so Maddie could run. There's a great video comparing the two right here. Another example from The Get Down is Mylene and her friends. Their break into the entertainment industry shows us how these 3 friends from different family backgrounds handle their sexualization differently, aptly pointed out by Tumblr user bleep 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 bleep. But in Euphoria, these teen characters, especially Cassie, are sexualized even when they're being raped and even when adults are having relations with them. Nick Robinson, who is very grown-up looking and who declared he was done playing high schoolers, is a high schooler in Hulu's show A Teacher. Robinson's character is groomed by his teacher, and there are indeed inappropriate scenes, but when you watch them, you see them for what they are: disturbing, sad, and horrific. Even if you were attracted to the heartthrob Nick Robinson before, he's not hot in the show because he's a kid, and seeing his character in these situations is heartbreaking. It's directed and acted in a way that's realistic and can make the audience uncomfortable. It brings light to the real issue at hand without glamorizing it like Euphoria does. These same types of situations should make the audience uncomfortable in Euphoria, but these girls being put in horrible situations and being assaulted and abused is just presented to us for shock value. The audience is happy when Cassie gets her ass beat by Maddie, but we don't get to see either of them grapple with their trauma. Cassie gets completely drunk, she takes Molly and embarrasses herself, and it's seen as Cassie's a mess. But it's concerning. Like I said before, Cassie's character seems to have issues with alcohol, and these issues aren't addressed either. Cassie is just tortured and sexualized throughout the show, and a lot of people, including myself, are calling it out and are not okay with it because it's weird. Nick DeRamio talks about how Britney Spears dancing around in her underwear in Crossroads isn't realistic and is made for male viewers.
Great work, Brittany! If you're wondering why you have to be nearly naked for this shot of you eating cereal, it's because it takes place within the first 30 seconds of the movie, and we really need to grab those young men. Okay, let's go for another take. Remember, you're an 18-year-old, still in high school, eating breakfast. Actually, can we get someone from wardrobe to tighten Brittany's tank top with a hair tie? We want it to really scoop up underneath her Also, are those briefs pulled up high enough to show her not yet a womanhood? And finally, can she have a pair of shoes on the table next to her food for some reason? I just feel like it'll be sexy. Doesn't it just feel right for this sexy, sexy child character? So already I'm noticing some weirdness with the art direction, like you have this child dancing naked.
I think this same sentiment applies to Euphoria. Maddie sleeps in her bra and makeup. Cassie's always topless. Even though the sexualization of teen girls is normalized in our culture, like Nick touches on, Sam Levinson takes it to a new extent. It's ridiculous, it's a farce, and as we know, Sam has been receiving a lot of backlash from fans and critics alike. So in the last section of this video, let's talk about Sam Levinson and how things got this bad. Sam Levinson has been receiving some criticism this season. As we've seen in the past, we can hate the creators of our favorite shows. I remember being on Tumblr and watching Doctor Who and watching Sherlock and loving the shows, but just hating Stephen Moffat. Not because I thought his writing was bad, which I do now, but because I didn't like that he was torturing the characters. Sam Levinson has been receiving some similar criticism from critics and from fans. And I would like to address something that's brought up a lot when people argue about this show. People like to say that the show is not meant for teens. Levinson himself also said this. It's about teenagers. Teenagers are gonna watch it. I think my kind of like millennial Gen Z cusps version of Euphoria was Skins, and that was rated mature. Like, it didn't have a rating where teens could watch it, I don't think, but I still watched it because like it's about people my age. And like Kenny JD says, it is just as bad that this show, rampant with sexualized teenage characters, is meant for adults. That's weird. Some people have problems with the fact that Sam is not creating situations for the characters that fans think they deserve. In this article, Drew Gregory says, "You created these characters, I've grown attached, and now you're letting them down and letting me down," citing what she perceives as fans' attitude towards Sam Levinson. This person claims that people are mad because Sam killed Ashtray and is having his character suffer, and fans simply want better for their favorite characters. But this isn't why people hate Sam Levinson, even fans. Of course, no one wants to see their favorite characters go through hardships or die, but as viewers, we know that bad things need to happen. I think we can all agree that it made sense for Ashtray to die. But people are upset because plot points and stakes are set up and not resolved. And we're talking high stakes, not just we forgot somehow that Rue has OCD. In season 2, plot points and conflicts are presented in a way that do not make sense for the characters and that totally abandon any potential that the first season had. There needs to be at least some continuity. And 8-hour-long episodes is more than enough time to at least address some of these conflicts. Instead, it's just set up for us to keep watching, with Sam hoping that we kind of just forget these setups as we indulge in the next taboo. A lot of people, including myself, are wondering, how did a season so bad, after a successful first season with a lot of potential, even make it? How was this allowed to air on HBO? Who let this happen? The answer is Sam Levinson. Sam Levinson said himself that he does not plan ahead or outline. I think it's really funny that somebody whose whole career is supposed to be writing just like openly admitted that. Especially, like, he was bold enough to admit that and then make a really, really bad second season. He says he doesn't plan or outline because it is boring. And like, that's one thing if you're writing for fun or if you're writing a first draft. Everyone has different writing and drafting styles. I personally love outlining. I wrote the entire first draft of this script on sticky notes, and I covered my whole wall with them. So it's like to each their own. But Sam Levinson's style is just to come up with the most over-the-top, crazy things he can think of, and then vomit them onto a script, and then show the script to HBO. And for some reason, HBO is like, okay. People will defend and try to explain away and justify Sam's mediocre writing by saying that the show is Sam. Literally, the whole show, every vibe, situation, and character is Sam Levinson. And this is a pretty weak crutch. The show is, of course, based on his life and his struggle with addiction, but it's also an adaptation of an Israeli show with the same title, and that isn't given nearly as much attention as Sam's own experiences. So Sam is bored by the writing process, but also, this is his own personal story, so it can really be whatever he wants it to be. What an amazing privilege to be able to not only have the rare opportunity, but the budget and major network backing of HBO to display your story. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, complete with your Freudian fantasies portrayed by a beautiful actress who you can write to have her shirt off in as many scenes as you want. It makes me think of how lucky Ben Platt was to play Evan Hansen in the adaptation. Like Julian Casablancas and Maude Apatow and many, many others, Sam Levinson's dad's name is Blue on Wikipedia. Let's talk about nepotism. There are some examples of people who may have had a little push to get to where they are, who I absolutely love. The Strokes are one of my favorite bands of all time. I honestly don't really care if your parents are famous as long as you do what you're doing well. Like, be a good actor, be a good musician. You made it in the door without much effort, but you can still give it your all by your own right and even outgrow your parents' reputations. You can still be your own artist and make work that is great. An example of this I would like to talk about is Miss Sofia Coppola. Sofia Coppola is, to me, the anti-Sam Levinson. Sam Levinson is like the Doodle Bob version of Sofia Coppola's SpongeBob. She writes about her own experiences as a woman. Yes, a straight white woman. It's worth noting that white women are almost exclusively included in her films. Coppola got opportunities from her father, Francis Ford Coppola, but she is an auteur in her own right. She explores important themes in a way that is stylistically her own. She tells stories and conveys emotions through cinematography and costume design as Levinson attempts to. Just look at her characters' costumes and makeup, and look at these gorgeous, rebloggable shots. She even uses soundtracks in a similar way as Levinson, but she's not applauded for this raw portrayal of issues and her focus on cinematography and costume design as Euphoria is. She's actually torn apart for using style over substance in the same way that Baz Luhrmann's The Get Down was. I mean, The Get Down was torn to shreds by critics. People thought it was too extravagant, too much. Really though, I will defend The Get Down until I die. It was a beautiful show that represented underrepresented communities with input from them and explored similar themes of toxic masculinity in beautiful ways. Shaolin subtly comes out to Dizzy when he finds out that he's seeing a boy, and his jealousy of Mylene begins to make sense. Shaolin grows in ways that Levinson doesn't allow Nate to. The Get Down should be getting all of the flowers that Euphoria is. Maybe if it had come out a little later, when TikTok had a chance to get it, it would have been more successful. It drives me nuts too that Sam Levinson even has some allusion to Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet in season 1. He's obviously inspired by Luhrmann's work, but whatever. Another person I want to touch on while we're talking about nepotism babies who did it better than Sam Levinson is, regrettably, Lena Dunham. I am not a Lena Dunham fan. I don't support the racist and sexist and inappropriate things she has done and said. There are a lot of videos covering this, and I think that if you want to learn more about Lena Dunham and like why people don't like her, I would check out the Celebrity Memoir Book Club podcast. So even though I don't like Lena Dunham, I think I should bring her up because she's another nepotism baby who had an HBO show based off of her own experiences. Lena Dunham, whose parents' names are Blue on her Wikipedia page, pitched half a page of Girls to HBO and miraculously squeezed a whole bunch of seasons out of it. It's worth noting that every single actress in the main cast is a nepotism baby. I want to talk a little bit about Girls to show that another nepotism baby who writes off their own experiences can still do a better job than Sam Levinson. Also, I've been talking a lot about teen shows, and I do need some adult shows to counter the argument of Euphoria isn't meant for kids. Girls is meant for 20-somethings, and it portrays 20-somethings, and it's fun to watch despite its glaring problems. problems. Lena Dunham gives up any sort of diversity in this series of herself, but there's a plot at least. There's continuity between seasons. There's payoff to issues. People make really bad choices and they backstab their friends and they lie and cheat and have kids without telling the fathers that the kids even exist because they just don't really feel like it. But when these things happen, it actually makes sense. When Marnie acts like a snake, it's entertaining and surprising, but not out of character because she is pretty unfavorable at times. The same with Lena Dunham's character. When unexpected things happen, the viewer can at least find a little bit of a reason for it. When Adam and Jez get together, it's unexpected, but you can be like, okay, yeah, that could happen in this friend group. I mean, Everybody Hates Chris is about Chris Rock's life, but Chris Rock didn't write in topless teenage characters to fulfill his fantasies. I'm saying it's okay for your writing to be based on you and based on your life. I can't think of anyone who doesn't draw from personal experiences in the writing. You can't write if you have nothing to go off of, and writing can be a therapeutic way to work through some of the things you've been through. It's truly beautiful when people can write their own pain, and then that pain can help others. But when someone criticizes how you craft a narrative for public consumption based on these experiences, you can't just be like, but it's my story, because it still needs to be consumable. It's not your personal journal, and if your story is interesting and well crafted, your story can touch the lives of others and be a good piece of media. Once your story is on a page and on the screen, it's not yours anymore. You can analyze author's intent, but as a writer, your story is compelling if it can exist on its own, if it can stand on its own 2 feet. It can be personal by all means, but that can't be an excuse for it being bad. Moonlight is a great example of someone's personal story that is beautiful and meaningful and can stand on its own as a compelling story that the viewer walks away from, whether they can relate to it or not, better than before. And yes, trash TV exists. You can watch TV and movies just to chill or have fun, but for a show that takes itself so seriously, it is truly more detrimental to society than shows like Jerry Springer or The Simple Life, which I'd argue leave you better off because at least you're laughing. Euphoria just sucks out your soul and leaves you to die and then gaslights you when you ask it why it just did that. Moonlight is deeply personal, based on the life of Barry Jenkins. It is also relatable and a meaningful viewing experience for many. Those who can relate to it see themselves represented and validated. Those who don't relate can learn others' experiences. All receive a cinematic experience that leaves them with something meaningful. There is gorgeous cinematography and mise-en-scène that speaks louder than words. And not that the Oscars are my favorite, but it still won Best Picture, which goes to show that you can have a stylish and beautiful and moody story about someone's experience that doesn't absolutely suck. Sam's groundbreaking show did not break anything but spirits around the world. You know what's groundbreaking? The Get Down. A Teacher is groundbreaking. Degrassi is groundbreaking. Dawson's Creek was groundbreaking. Skins was even kind of groundbreaking. So if you made it this far, thank you so very much for watching and for listening. It means a lot. If you like Euphoria, that's totally fine. I watched the whole thing twice, so there were so many opportunities set up in season 1 for this second season to be really good, really entertaining, and even meaningful, but it was just completely squandered by Sam Levinson. It's such a cool idea, it's so pretty, it's got such cool music, but unfortunately it fell short this season, and I think it's doing some real damage to society. So yeah.
Take my hands now. You are the cause of my euphoria.